Hello again, welcome to today's science lesson. Okay, so it's still the same date as this morning's maths, so it's the 26th of January, and your skill is to understand the movement of the Earth, understand the movement of the Moon relative to Earth. Okay, so write that down, underline it for me please. Okay, and once you've done that, have a think about this question. What is the Moon and why does it glow? Okay, think about your previous learning. What is the Moon? Why does it glow? Okay, perhaps you know the answers. Perhaps you want to go back through your catch-up books and have a look at previous learning. Does it always look the same? Why do you think it appears to change shape? Okay, so have a think about those. If you're at home, you might want to have a discussion with somebody around you. You might want to write down some notes about what you already know. Okay, let's find out. So, the Moon reflects the light of the Sun so that we see it from Earth, especially at night time. So the Moon itself doesn't let off any light, okay? It doesn't conduct any light, it is purely reflection from the Sun. But why does it appear to change shape? Hopefully, you'll recognise this astronaut here and see that it is Neil Armstrong. Okay, so why does it change shape? So as the Moon moves around the Earth, the Sun stays in the same place. So this is the Sun, okay? And the Moon continues to go round, okay? It goes around the Earth. Let's find out more. So we can only see the parts of the Moon which reflect the Sun's light. Okay. We know that the Moon travels anti-clockwise around the Earth and that it takes 29.5 days. And during this cycle, the Moon has 8 different phases. Each phase has got a different name. Can you name any of them? Are you already aware of the phases of the Moon? Okay, perhaps you might know a couple, perhaps you may. I think that you'll probably definitely would have heard of one, if not more. Okay, so let's find out more. Make sure you write some notes about each of the phases because you will need to write a couple of sentences at the end about each of the phases. Okay, so when it comes to discuss those parts, you can certainly write notes that will help you. Okay, let's find out more about the phases of the Moon.
Each time you look at the Moon, it's going to look a little different. Sometimes you'll see the entire Moon, other times you'll see just a portion of it. In this video, I'd like to go over why the Moon looks the way it does, and a few other things about the Moon's orbit. The Moon takes about a month to orbit the Earth. The Sun can only shine on half the Moon at any given time. Since the Moon orbits at exactly the same rate as it spins, we only see one side of the Moon from the Earth. The side we don't see is usually called the far side of the Moon. You can also call it the dark side of the Moon, but it's not always dark, so this name can be a bit confusing. I'm going to show a split screen here to show things from 2 different views. On the left-hand side of the screen, I'll show a top-down view. On the right-hand side of the screen, I'll show what it looks like from Earth. When the Moon is closest to the Sun, the side of the Moon facing the Earth is dark. The sunlight reflects off the Earth, so we can still see the Moon if we look closely. We refer to this as a new Moon. As the Moon comes around, we start to see a tiny sliver of the Moon. This is called the waxing crescent. A few more days pass by, and now we can see half the Moon. We can call this a half moon, but more specifically it's called a first quarter, because we are a quarter of the way through the phases. A few more days, and only a small portion of the Moon is not lit up. This is called the waxing gibbous. When the Moon is on the other side of the Earth, it is completely lit. This is called a full moon, and it's probably the phase that you're most familiar with. Now the light begins to fade. We mirror the previous phases. Here's the waning gibbous, the third quarter, the waning crescent, and back to a new moon. Here's some tricks to remembering the phases. Waxing means the sunlit portion is increasing. Waning means the sunlit portion is decreasing. Crescent is where the moon is mostly dark, and gibbous is where the moon is mostly lit. Let's make sure we're accurate. The Earth is rotating once a day, tilted by 23.5 degrees. I'm going to bring back my good friend Bob here, who lives in North America. Bob can't always see the moon. Sometimes he'll be on the opposite side of the Earth. Because of the moon's orbit, it will rise about 50 minutes later each day. Here's the neat thing. If you know what phase of the moon we're on, then you know about the right time of day or night to look for the moon. If we're currently on a full moon, then at about the same time the sun is setting, we'll be able to see the moon rise. If we're on a new moon, it will rise at about the same time the sun rises. Now let's take a look at a first quarter moon. It will rise at about noon and set at about midnight. And a third quarter moon will rise at midnight and set at about noon. So there you have it. I hope that next time you look up at the moon, you see it just a little different than you did before. If you'd like to learn even more about the moon, go ahead and click on this video. And if you'd like to see how a clicky pen works, go ahead and click on this video. Thank you for watching. My name is Jared Owen, and I will see you in the next video.
Okay, so hopefully you found out lots of really interesting facts about the phases there. And now the phase I thought you might be most familiar with, which is also what the video says, is the full moon. A lot of people are familiar with the full moon, okay, when you can see the whole of the moon. Well, obviously it's only half, but it looks like the full moon. So when we talk about the phases of the moon, we use the terms waxing and waning. So it was mentioned briefly there. Do you remember what these terms mean or what they refer to? Do you remember which way is which? Okay, have a quick talk to your partner, see if you can remember. See how much of the video that you took in. Okay, so waning means that we can see less of the moon. Okay, the waning phases appear to decrease in size, so the amount of moon that we can see decreases. Okay, so then waxing means that we can see more of the moon. Okay, it appears to increase in size. Okay, so it starts off with the new moon. Okay, and then we can see less and less of the darkness, so we can see more light of the moon. Okay, so the video mentioned a crescent moon and a gibbous moon. What do those terms mean? So a crescent moon appears as a sliver. Okay, so it's a shape of a crescent, like that. It's because most of the surface we see isn't facing the sun. Okay, and then a gibbous moon over here appears over half lit up. So if you can see more than half of the moon, okay, it's a gibbous moon. It's because most of the surface we can see is facing the sun. Okay, so a really fun and delicious way of representing the phases of the moon is to use Oreos or a similar biscuit, okay? As long as it's round and it's got like a white icing in the middle, then that'd be great. So let's have a look. So we need some Oreos, okay? My local Sainsbury's had sold out of the normal Oreos, so I had to get the Oreo thins, okay? But they'll still work, I've just got to be more careful. You probably want a black pen, pencil or crayon, okay, whatever's easiest. A spoon, a recording sheet, and a moon phases sheet. Okay, they don't need to be printed. If you don't have a printer or you prefer to draw it, that's fine. You can draw this recording sheet here. So you just need to draw 8 circles and label those. Okay, this one you don't need to draw. You're going to do that as you're as your activity. Okay? So, step 1. Separate the cookie halves carefully so that you can see the icing on one half of the cookie. So, you have to get it. I've got a flat palette knife, so it's not very sharp, but you have to kind of do it really carefully. So you've got 2 flat pieces. Or you could do it like my first attempt. And end up like this. That's not ideal. Okay, so you've each got 2 halves of a cookie. Okay, this is this. Step 2. Look at the moon phases sheet. Use the sheet to recreate the moon phases using the cookie icing. Scrape away the icing from the cookie using a small spoon. Use 1 cookie for each moon phase. So, I'm going to start off by doing a... what should we start off with? Okay, so we've got our full moon. And we've got our new moon. We've got those already. Okay, then, really carefully, you can make the shapes. So you can carve shapes out of your white moons. Okay, until eventually it's a bit messy. Okay, so you can do the different phases of the moon. I'm gonna have hands. Okay, so have a go at doing that. And these are the phases. So, this is the new moon. And this is the full moon. You can see on your, on the moon phases on the screen. And then, I've done this one here, which is, I'd probably say, what should we go with? If I do it a little bit more, it could be the waxing crescent, I suppose. But this is up to you, okay? So you have to try. If you've only got 8 biscuits as well, you have to really concentrate. So that's more of a waxing crescent. It could be the waning crescent, depending on which way up you hold it, I suppose. Okay, so have a go at doing those. Until eventually, you're going to have something which looks like this. Okay, so you can see the different parts of the moon. Step 3 is to then draw the moon phases, okay, on here. So you've got your moon phases that you have looked at to do your Oreos. If you've used Oreos, if you've used biscuits, you could take a picture, stick that into your book. That would be a great idea. If you haven't, that's absolutely fine, okay? You can just use your black pen or pencil or crayon, and you can draw the moons on the recording sheet or on the 8 circles you have drawn in your books. I would also like you to write a sentence to explain what's happening at each phase. Okay, so you could use those keywords of waning, waxing, if we see less, if the moonlight increases or decreases. Okay, really trying just to explain how the Earth's moving and why we see different parts of the moon at different times. If you can't use biscuits, like I said, you can draw the moon phases, or perhaps you could use some black card, cut out the shapes of the different phases and stick them onto the recording sheet. How creative can you be? Okay, I'd love to see some of your ideas. Okay, here are just a few that I've found, which would be great. So with this one, if you've got the recording sheet, you just need to cut out different sizes of black card to represent it, because you can leave the white circle there, okay? But you just need some black card or black paper, or just colour it, it's not a problem. Okay. Here is the moon phases on paper plates. Okay, different parts, different shades, different phases of the moons on the paper plates. And then somebody else has made a mobile. Okay, so you've got the Earth in the middle, and then there's the different parts of the moon all around. And then again, you could just draw it. Okay, and this one's actually just using black squares, not a circle, but it's showing the white part of the moon. Okay, it's showing the actual light of the moon, the moonlight, which is reflected of the sun. Okay, so really take your time. Obviously go back to the video and rewind it if you need the phase of the moon. They're also on the resources on the website for you as well. As I say, you don't have to print anything off at all. And if you haven't managed to get any biscuits, then please don't worry. Okay, it's always something you could try at a later date. Okay, it's always good to revisit things that you've learnt. Okay, I thought it would just be more fun to do it with Oreos, because when I saw an Oreo the other day and I was like, this would be a great idea. And it also means you get to eat the Oreos afterwards if you like Oreos. Okay. So we now know the 8 moon phases, but what happens when the moon moves directly in front of the sun? Let's have a look, see if we can find out what that means.
In the previous video, we talked about the phases of the moon and how that relates to the moon's orbit around the Earth. It might be helpful to watch that video first. To put things in perspective, here's the relative size of the sun, the moon, and the Earth. The sun is about 400 times bigger than the moon. Now let's look at the actual distances between them. The sun is also about 400 times further from the Earth than the moon is. This is why the sun and the moon appear to be about the same size in the sky. So now you know that the animations on screen are not always drawn to scale. The moon's orbit is actually not a perfect circle. It's in the shape of an ellipse. When it's closest to the Earth, we call it perigee. When it's farthest away from the Earth, we call it apogee. It's only a small difference, but it's enough to cause the moon to grow and shrink as seen from the Earth. Okay, now we get into some rare events with the moon. Each time a new moon happens, there's a chance that the moon will block the sunlight and cause a shadow to appear on a portion of the Earth. When this happens, it's called a solar eclipse. The reverse can also happen. Each time we have a full moon, there's a chance that the Earth will block the sunlight from reaching the moon. We call this a lunar eclipse. So now the question is, why don't we get a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse every month? As the Earth orbits around the sun, we can map out a 2D plane that's referred to as the ecliptic. The moon doesn't orbit on the same plane. It's tilted by about 5 degrees. This means that most of the time, the moon passes above or below the sun as seen from the Earth. We can map out 2 invisible points in space at which the moon's orbit crosses the ecliptic. We call these the lunar nodes. When they line up with the sun, Earth, and moon, that's when a solar eclipse or lunar eclipse will occur. This is referred to as an eclipse season. These happen about twice a year. During an eclipse season, there's no guarantee that you'll be able to see anything. In the case of a solar eclipse, the moon may pass slightly above or below the sun and give us a partial solar eclipse. This won't really dim the sunlight enough for us to see it. When the moon entirely crosses the sun, we will be able to see it. If the moon is closer to apogee, then it will appear smaller and we'll get what's called an annular solar eclipse. If the moon is closer to perigee, then it will appear bigger and we'll get what's called a total solar eclipse. Even if you're lucky enough to be on the right spot on the Earth, the longest you'll be able to see a solar eclipse is about 7 minutes. You'll need to be under the umbra, which is the darkest part of the moon's shadow. For a lunar eclipse, the Earth is the one casting the shadow. We may see a partial lunar eclipse or a total lunar eclipse. This can be seen from anywhere on Earth where it's night and will last for several hours. For about an hour, the moon will appear red because of the sunlight bending around the Earth. This is where the term blood moon comes from. So next time someone says the words solar eclipse or lunar eclipse, you could explain it to them, or you could just send them a link to this video. I'm Jared Owen. Thank you for watching.
I think you'll be able to explain it to whoever asks. Okay, some of the video there did get a little bit too scientific, okay, but the main things were the first few minutes when it spoke about the sun, okay, and obviously the moon covering the sun for the solar eclipse and the lunar eclipse, okay. So it's really, really good just to know that, because it can happen. I mean, it happens, it says twice a year, okay, depending on whether the moon is furthest or closest to the earth, depends on whether it's a total eclipse or not. Okay, but it's really fascinating actually. So if you ever get the chance and there's going to be a total eclipse, and always try and have a look. Okay, so final thought for today then. Can you match each phase of the moon to the correct label? So we've got the labels here. I'm going to show you the different phases of the moon. See if you can identify them. Okay, what is this? Okay, this, hopefully nice and easy to start you off with, okay, is a full moon. Because we can see the whole of the moon, the moonlight. Okay, we obviously can't see the back of the moon, it's just the half we can see. Okay, what's this one? Okay, this is the new moon. Then we've got this one. Do you remember? You might want to look back through your notes about the waxing and the waning. See if you can find out which one it is, or is it one of the quarters? Okay, this one is actually the waxing gibbous. Okay, I'm going to go back slightly. Look how much this changes. Not a great deal. Okay, very slight change there. Can you identify this one? It's the first quarter. Then we've got this one. What could this one be? Getting a bit trickier now. It's hard to remember the difference between the wax and the waning, isn't it? Okay, so this one is the waxing crescent. So if that was the waxing crescent, what's this one? It's the waning crescent. Okay, so the shape of the crescent. And then this one here is going to be the waning gibbous. And then finally, we've got the last quarter. Okay, great job. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed today's science lesson. Please do send me anything that you have made with the phases of the moon. I'd be really interested and quite excited to see what you've come up with and how creative you have been. If you have managed to use the Oreos, I'd equally like to see, and make sure you do take a photo. Even if they're broken and they're not quite as they should be, okay, it's okay. It will still be great to share, preferably before you've eaten them too. Okay, super job. There is an optional challenge for you today. Okay, so if you would like to extend your learning, you could complete a moon diary by recording the visibility of the moon each night. Now this is also on the resources for you. Okay, now you don't have to do it, it's optional. I just thought some of you might like to do it. Okay, especially if the moon and space is something you're interested in. Okay, so you can just shade the circle that the section of the moon is illuminated. Okay, if you can't see it because there's clouds, and just draw a cloud over it. Okay, but if you can see it, it's a really good idea to write the day, and then you'll probably be able to see it. If you do it at the same time each night, say just before bed or after dinner, because obviously it's very dark quite early these days. Okay, so if you do it at the same time, you'll probably notice a pattern of the moon and how it changes. So perhaps you could have a go at doing that. If not, not a problem. Okay, don't forget to send me your work. As always, I'd love to see it. Okay, enjoy the rest of your day. Have fun eating your Oreos and your biscuits, or making whatever you're making for your moon phases. Have fun. See you tomorrow.